We are talking about the process of having a systematic plan for generating what we call environmental data that is going to be enough for the use that data is supposed to be used. So a systematic plan simply means a plan that is well defined. It moves from step one, second step, third step, fourth step, and it is a process that we use to generate environmental data, and not just environmental data, but data of enough quantity that will be used for whichever reason it is intended to be used. So that is data quality objectives. Now, if you look at this diagram here, you're going to see we have the systematic planning here. For example, this is what we call the data quality objective process. Then we move to quality analysis project plan. We move to data verification. We verify the data. We validate the data. Then we look at the quality of the data quality assessment. So from there, we make the plans and we implement. So the data quality objective process is made up of 7 strategic planning approaches that are actually based on scientific methods that scientists use to prepare data or for data collection activity. So it has 7 processes. That is what I have, strategic processes. That is what I said. So the data quality is normally used during the planning stage. It is used during the planning stage. So any research or any study that requires data collection, then is during the planning stage is where that is done. So I want us to go straight to uh, uh, the DQO process. So there are a number of things that it does, and the first one is it is going to establish a common language that is going to be shared by the decision makers, the technical personnel, and also the statisticians in their discussion of some program objectives and data quality. So during this particular data quality process, data quality objective process, a language that is common is going to be established. By common, we simply mean a language that all those people can understand, a language that is uniformly and commonly agreed by everybody. So you are going to agree on a language, and that language is going to be used as a channel to share decisions between decision makers, to share some technical discussions between some technical personnel, and to share some statistics based on the discussions of the objectives of that particular program and the quality of data. Number 2, the DQO again is going to give a mechanism to actually bring together many objectives into a major critical question. So it is going to give a mechanism to pare down a multitude of objectives. We're going to put so many objectives together into a single major critical questions. Number 3, it is going to facilitate the development of clear statements of the program objectives and any constraints that will be optimized for the data collection plans. And last but not least, it will give the logical structure. The logical structure in which we're going to have an iterative process of guidance, the same structure that is going to look into the design, the same structure that is going to actually accomplish feedback. So I previously said that the DQO contains 7 steps, and I'm going to look into the steps. The first step is the is stating the problem. That is the first step. State the problem. And in the first step, stating the problem, here you are going to actually to define or to identify which problem is actually causing this study. So the problem, you will define the problem that is making that study mandatory. Then, still understating the problem, the second activity that is going to happen is identifying the team that is responsible for planning. Number 4, you're going to look at the budget. Number 5, you're going to do schedule. So back to what we were talking about. We said the first step is stating the problem, and we said um, in stating the problem, there are a number of things that are happening, and the first one is to define the problem that is actually causing that study. Then number 2, we need to identify a team of people that are going to be responsible for the planning. Then we need to look at the budget. Then we make schedules. Now, the second step is going to be to identify the goal. Uh, Here you're going to look at how we are going to use those environmental data that we will collect in making sure that we are achieving the objectives, and we are also solving the problem that we have identified in the first step. So we're going to identify the study questions, and then we're going to look at what are the alternative outcomes. We're also going to define the alternative outcomes, that when we look at this scenario this way, then A can happen, or A can come out, or B can come out, and C can come out. These are alternative outcomes. They're going to be defined also. Now, the third stage again is we are going to identify the information inputs. Here, we are going to look at the data and the information that is actually needed to answer the study questions that we have come up with while identifying the goal. So what data and what information is needed to answer those questions? Then we are going to the next stage, which is actually the fourth stage. And the fourth stage is defining boundaries. So defining boundaries, you need to look at what population are we targeting, what are the characteristics of interest in that population, and what are the limits, or what is the scale of influence that particular population that we are going to actually carry out our study, or we are going to collect our data. The fifth, then we'll have to develop the analytical approach. In the analytical approach, we're going to look at the measurements or the variables or the parameters of interest. We are going to specify also the type of inference that we will make. If you remember inferential analysis in information presentation and analysis, so you need to specify the type of inference that you're going to make. Then you come up with the logic for drawing the conclusions, or coming or making the conclusions from the findings that we will have obtained from the survey or the research. Rukia, you turn off your mic kindly. The other method is specify performance or acceptance criteria. We need to specify the performance or acceptance criteria. So here we are going to look at what is the hypothesis testing, or how are we going to make the decision. So decision making or hypothesis testing. I spoke about this when I was doing information presentation and analysis. Yeah, and I said a number of things are happening here. Is one, when we are doing hypothesis testing, we can either accept the hypothesis or reject the hypothesis, and I called it the null hypothesis. I then requested you guys to study IBM SPSS, and you did not take any initiative to study that. You will remember my statements when you will be sitting for the ABMA examinations. You will remember, you will understand. During that exam, you will understand why I told you to study IBM SPSS. In specifying performance or acceptance criteria, we talked about the hypothesis testing, and we said here, or the decision making, and we said here, we are going to specify what we call the probability limits for false rejection and false acceptance decision errors. Why is this why is it rejected, or where is false rejection happening, and where is false acceptance happening? So how do we make those decision errors? Then number 2, you have estimation approaches. You have estimation approaches, and the estimation approaches here is a development of performance criteria for new data that is actually being collected, or acceptable criteria for maybe existing data that is being considered for use. So you're going to actually have a criteria to look at the performance of the new data that we are collecting, or we have an acceptance criteria for data that is already existing. So the question is, how is this data that we are collecting going to be useful when it comes to the development? Or rather, how acceptable is this data that was already collected when it comes to using the system? Now the other stage is developing the plan for obtaining data. You need to come up with a plan, select the resource effectively, the sampling, the analysis plan that is going to meet the performance criteria that you will have created there. Now you might be asking yourself, why use DQA? Why use DQO? Okay, the first reason is that it will help to assure that the type, the quantity, and the quality of data that is used in making that decision is actually appropriate for the intended application that you want to develop. Number two, DQO is going to save resources because we are going to make some data collection operations that are more resource effective here. Then the third one, it is actually a convenient way to make sure that to document activities and even decisions, and that is going to make it easy for making communications in terms of the data that was collected, the design, and also the communication to other project participants and all those people that are funding the project or the project stakeholders. Fourth, it is going to enable data users and some relevant experts of the project to be able to participate in actually collect in data collection planning process. So they are going to specify their needs in there before the data collection actually happens. The fifth one, it is going to encourage clarification of some objectives that are not clear. We call them vague objectives. So it is going to encourage participation um, uh, for vague of vague objectives. Then last but not least, it is something that can really be applied to any project. We can apply DQO to any project, regardless of how big that project is or how small that project is. Now, those are the reasons why we are using DQO. Now, let's look at the business intelligence reporting requirements. Now, normally we use the business intelligence reporting requirements uh, to refer to uh, um, reporting. Yeah, to just refer to reporting. We normally use them as the same thing, but that is a wrong way because there is a difference between reporting and the business intelligence. Because if you look at the business intelligence, then the business intelligence is much more detailed and focuses on charts. It is going to look at the charts for the first data and even the data correlations for maybe the second group of data. So it is going to actually compare the two, the first group and the second group. So reporting and business intelligence is what we call BI. It is going to, for you to really get a distinction in terms of understanding this concept, you need to have the following descriptions in your mind. Okay, we have different roles of reporting and business intelligence that your organization should do, or other words, that can actually be done in organization, or they need to become clear for an organization. And the first one is reporting shows you what happened so far and what is the status of that thing. When you're reporting something, then it is going to show you things that already happened previously and the current status of a particular thing. So reports at times will focus on one specific set of data or maybe records. So we have the business intelligence showing you why. Now listen, this is one of the major difference that I want you to get. Reporting will show you what happened and what is the current status. Kuna mtu anafaa kuzima mic yake. I don't know who that is. It's making noise. The business reporting is going to show you what happened and what is the status of that particular scenario. Now, when it comes to business intelligence, it will tell you why the things happened the way the things happened, and how you can actually improve the performance in the coming days. That is a bigger difference that you actually need to get here. A report will tell you what happened, but a business intelligence is going to show you why some things happened and how you are actually going to prevent them happening later, or how you're going to improve the performance later. That is important that you need to know. Another key thing that you need to understand is change is inevitable. Change will always, or is always going to come. Yeah. Change will always, or is always going to come. If you look at reports, reports are going to use the same format over time. Yeah. So if they are using the same format over time, then we have people that are actually using those reports. They will get used to that particular format. So they will be able to see the information available in that format, in that report, just by looking at it. They don't have to have a lot of time spent there, a lot of effort used to make sure they figure out some things or what new format means each time. But if you look at the business goals and conditions that or in the business intelligence, they change over time. Now, since the business goals and conditions change over time, then reporting also needs to change. So it needs to be modified, it needs to be extended. Sometimes we need to have some new reports that that might be required. But if you look at some reporting tools, we have some report formats that are actually limited to some set of templates. We have templates that are actually limiting the format. Now, this is actually going to uh, it is going to cause the person who is actually using that report to walk back to the department or the IT department or maybe the reporting tool vendor so that they can get another new report made. So if you have a template that is customized and already defined, then it is going to cause the person using that report to really go back to the IT department and ask, hey, can I get a new format of this report, or can I get a new report? So considering this struggle, of course, it can be expensive. For instance, if your vendor is in Nairobi and you're in Mombasa, so you can imagine the locomotion there. You can imagine you might have to spend, or if you don't want to spend maybe a night there, you have to take a flight. Then how much is a flight from Mombasa to Nairobi? That is definitely not below 5,000, depending on what kind of a plane you're using. If you go on a passenger plane, that could be maybe between 5 and 7,000. You go on a private jet, of course, you know how much that is. So it's expensive. It's really expensive. So so far you should be able to understand the difference between the two. Should be able to get them. Now, having understood those differences, the question could be, what do we do now? Because we have reports and we have the business intelligence, and we say the reports tell you what happened and what is the status of that particular scenario now. While the business intelligence is telling you why something happened and how you can improve that particular thing in future, or the performance of that particular system in future. So now we have that confusion. Since the BI is changing, the business intelligence is changing, is evolving every day, then the format of the report also needs to evolve. Now there's that problem. So what do we do? So we have reporting tools, of course, designed to be used by what we call the front desk, or what we call the operational staff. And if we actually work this way, if there's any delay that needs to come in the business needs, or maybe in the operational action, is actually minimized, or maybe caused not to happen, because we have some people that are actually working on it. Then if you look at the BI tools, they should also be available. They should be usable by both business people and even the front office. The people should be able to understand the insights that they actually need from the business intelligence without having any translation. So that is the solution. We have the front desk handling the reports. Then you have business intelligence that are really understandable, and they don't require a lot of translation to really understand them effectively. Now, I'm not going back to functional requirements. I talked about functional requirements. You will allow me move from there. This was just some repetition. Uh, so I want us to go to the next thing. Yes, drawing UML use case diagrams. This is where we are coming to. So we need to understand, first of all, what is a use case diagram, what is its use, and how is it important when it comes to to system analysis and design. It's really important for us to understand what that is. Now, so when you talk about a use case diagram, we are looking at a diagram. First of all, the UML stands for Unified Modeling Language. Now, when we have use case diagrams, this is actually a diagram that is going to show how the system functions. It is going to focus on the functionality of the system, and it is going to use components like the actors and some use cases, and even show some set of relationship between those. Now, the question could be, who is the actor? The actor is simply a person or maybe an entity that is having a role in that particular system. For example, if we talk about a customer is an actor. If we are designing an e-commerce system, then a customer is an actor because he has a role. He has a role to do in there. So the actors, they can be people or maybe entities. For example, a database. The database is an actor. But now, in this case, the database is not a person. It is an entity. Okay, so it's something that you really need to understand. So these are kind of diagrams that we use to show the functionalities of the system, to show how the system is really working. So we are going to use use case diagrams to make sure that we are visualizing the functional requirements of a system. Remember, it is this particular it is this functional requirement of a system that it is going to be translated into the choice of design and even the development priorities. The design that people are going to have is going to come from the requirements, and even whatever is going to be developed, it is going to be an implementation of those requirements. So the use case diagrams, they are also going to help us to identify any internal and even external factors. So at times we are creating systems, and this system can be affected by either an external factor or an internal factor. So when we draw the use case diagrams, they're going to help us to identify if we have anything in the internal that can actually affect the system or influence the system, whether positively or negatively. Also, if we have anything in the external that can actually influence the system, whether positively or negatively. So they are going to give us an understanding or to help us identify that. Now, what is the main purpose of use case diagrams? Now, the main purpose of use case diagrams is to make sure that we are capturing the dynamic aspect of the system. We are going to look at we are going to use them to define to define the purpose of the system. But we have also other 4 diagrams that we will learn much later that are going to work in collaboration with that. We're going to look into those diagrams much later, 4 of them. But this one is going to show us the functionality of the system. So it is going to show us the dynamic aspect of that particular system. So we are going to use case diagrams are normally used to gather the requirements of that system. They are used to gather the requirements of that system. And when we are just talking about requirements, we are not limiting ourselves to what the system is actually supposed to do. We are also talking about what factors, both internal and external, that is actually influencing the operation of that system. Very important. Okay, that is very important. Okay, so if we look in brief, what is the purpose of use case diagram? In brief, I have simplified all that long story that I was telling you there into a number of points, into four points. And these 4 points are the purpose of use case diagrams. And the first one is basically we are using them to gather requirements of the system. I've talked this in the previous statement. So if somebody is taking notes, then that is the first purpose. The first purpose of use case diagrams is to gather the requirements of a system. Number 2, we use case diagrams to get the outside view of the system. We use it to get the outside view of the system. Remember, we said that it will help us to identify the external factors, external environmental factors that are actually influencing the system. So it helps us to get an outside view of that particular system. Number 3 is a point that I have mentioned previously, that it will help us to identify both external and internal factors, both external and internal factors that are going to influence the system. What are those things that are outside the system, but they are affecting the operation of the system, whether positive or negative? Positively or negatively? Or what are those internal things that are affecting the system positively or negatively? For example, when we are talking about the rate of evaporation is affected by temperature. So we expect that when the temperatures are high, then we're going to have a higher rate of evaporation. So things like that. So what are these factors that are really influencing the operation of that particular system? Now, the last thing is that when we have the use case diagrams, they're going to show us the interaction among the requirements of the actors. How are those requirements of those actors interacting? Remember, we said actors, they are either people or entities in that particular system that have a role. People or entities that have a role. So basically, these are the four purposes, or they are the 4 purposes of UML diagrams. Now from there, hoping that is clear, let's move to the basic symbols. The basic symbols and notations that we use when we are drawing use case diagrams. Remember, if you revisit the past papers for this unit, you're going to see this question. It will never miss in any exam. Get that from me. This question will never miss. I've gone through the past papers, all of them. And I know you will never miss a question that requires you to draw a UML diagram, or maybe any of the other 3 diagrams that we are going to discuss. So it is very important to make sure you master the symbols as well as practice on drawing those diagrams. So the first symbol and the first notation that is actually used when it comes to UML diagrams is this, the rectangle. This rectangle. And the rectangle is normally used to show the system. It's normally used to show the system. So if I'm talking about a booking system, then I need to draw that rectangle. I need to draw that rectangle this way, meaning now this is the system. Then anything else now we're going to talk about is going to be either inside this system or outside this system. We can have actors outside of that system. Okay, let's move on. We have another symbol. So we said the rectangle is showing you the system boundaries. This is where the system ends. Okay, and then we have another thing, another important thing that you need to know is that we have use case. We have use case that are normally shown using ovals, and the use case will show the functions. They are normally verbs, and they are showing you the functions. But then we have the actors, and the actors are normally placed outside the system boundary. Get this clear. This rectangle will show the system boundary. We have use cases that are going to be inside the rectangle. They are going to be inside the system. The use cases are the functions of the system. We normally give them verbs. they are functions of the system. They're going to be inside that the rectangle because they are the functions of the system. Then we have actors. We are going to place those actors outside the boundaries of the system. So anytime you are drawing a UML diagram and I see any actor inside the system, I'm not even thinking, I just mark that wrong. I actually cancel it and give you a 0 because those are main things that you need to know. One, uh, the rectangle shows the system. We have use cases. Use cases are shown using this label, and normally they are verbs. Yeah, we show them using ovals and they are verbs. Na nimesema zina represent the functions of that particular system. For example, booking. So if the booking is a function, then we can have it inside that system. Then we have actors shown by this symbol. You can see this symbol here. A symbol in a kamutu fulani, this symbol. This symbol shows the actor. And I have said the actors are normally put outside the system boundary. We have the use cases which are normally shown using the oval shapes. They are put inside the system boundary. Actors are shown using this symbol. They are put outside the boundary. Then we have the relationship. We need to show what is the relationship between this particular actor and this function. This person is playing a role in this system. So what is the relationship between this person and the role itself? Okay, so we show relationships among use cases, and we normally use arrows. Okay, we normally use arrows. So we have two types of arrows. We have two types of relationships. We have included and we have extended. So we are showing an included relationship this way. It is a solid arrow, as you can see. Then the other one is supposed to be a halfway arrow. There's a mistake here in this document. The other one is supposed to be halfway. We have this one part missing. Yeah, something like that. Okay. Now again here, I have repeated this. I have put this one in green so that you can remember the purposes of use case diagrams. It's something we've talked about there. I have some more added things here. So we normally develop use case diagrams in the early stages of development. Remember, we use them to gather requirements. So in the first stages or the early stages of the development, now we have purposes like specifying the context of the system. That is one. That is where we have the system boundary. Then capturing the requirements of a system. Hii tulikuwa tumeshaongelea. Then we have validating a system architecture. We have driving implementation and generate test cases. Then we have developed by analysis together with domain experts. Now let's look at an example of a use case diagram. So here is an example, a standard form use case diagram here that we use in UML. So if you look at this one, I have said that this one, the rectangle, let me just change the color of my highlighter. So I said this rectangle, I want you to see this rectangle here, this one. I said this rectangle is the system boundary. This one is the system boundary. Then inside the system boundary, we are going to have the use cases, and we say the use cases are functions. And I have said we label those functions with verbs. That is why you see here handle message, handle call, manage build. All these are verbs. So all these are use cases. All these are use cases. All these are use cases. Then we have the actors. We say the actors are put outside the what? The system boundary. So these are our actors. And remember we said that the actors, they can be people or entities. For example, this one, customer, this is a person. The customer is a person. Yeah? But now if you look at cellular phone, this is is a phone, yeah? Is an entity, it's not a person. That is why I said the actors can be people or entities. So cellular phone is an entity. This one is now an external phone company. So it could be something like Safaricom. This is like Safaricom or Airtel. Is also an actor. Is also an actor. So it's very important, it's very essential that you understand um, what are the components, the symbols and the notations that are used in UML diagrams. So if we try to understand this particular diagram here, we are simply trying to say that we have this actor here. Let me pick this one. We have this actor making a phone. This actor is going to make a phone call. Is going to is having a phone call, and this phone call can actually do two functions. And the first one is either handle a message, maybe that is send a message, or they can make a call. But now, this person who is actually handling this cellular phone here, remember, this phone is from a company. There's a company that is actually supporting these services. And that company is like, for example, let's say this is Airtel. So the person is using Airtel SIM card. So this is Airtel, for instance. This is Airtel. So you see, that is why you see here, we have this relationship here. Because again, this external company can still use the system to handle the same things this this cellular phone is handling. Then we have a customer here who is actually getting the bill. Which bill? Here, remember, you are using company services. So whatever bill is coming from here needs to go to the customer here. Yeah, so you can study this use case and actually see what does this system require. When you look at it, it requires maybe a phone call. It requires a subsystem that can actually manage a bill. It requires a function that can handle a call. It requires a function that can handle a message. Then it requires a link with an external company that can actually offer these services to the system. So when you look at use cases that way, there are things that you really understand. That is why I said one of the purposes of the use cases is to collect, yeah, is to collect requirements, okay, is to collect requirements. That's very important. We need to understand that. We need to have that in mind. Let's continue. So I have given another a table here. That's why I asked you guys to make sure you get this resource. There's a table here that was put. This table is actually giving more clarity. So it is we have the notation description and we have the visual presentation. And the notation description, we have maybe the actor, for example, and we have more information. Uh, this is actually someone who is interacting with the use case system. Then we have another notion that I said we need to give names to this actor because it can be a person or an entity, and in that case is a noun. Then what role does this actor play in that business transaction? And how do we show the actor in the system? We use this symbol like I have said before. So this is just a table that contains the same things that I have spoken about previously. I am not going into the details of that. Get that document and make sure you just check it again. All right. I don't want to go further. I want to stop there. There is something I need to handle.